What's going on, guys? Brian here, and today I want to talk to you about how to fix the wars and territory control system within New World, but make no mistake, this is just my opinion on the matter, so fear not, internet. Just because I make videos about New World, it doesn't mean that I actually have any influence over the game, and I'm just like you. I'm just a fan of this game, and I want to share it with the world. Now, saying that, I just want you guys to know that there are those out there who enjoy the current war and territory control invasion system. So just note that you might not enjoy these ideas outright, but I'd love for your thoughts on maybe how to blend my ideas with the current system, and I'm obviously just looking for your feedback on this subject itself. And just so you know that I'll take this kind of feedback and make sure that I post it over on the forums for the devs, and when I do that, I'll be sure to include a link in the description so you guys can go weigh in on the conversation if you want as well. But that's just going to be what we do here. This is a discussion type video. This is just something where I'm sharing my thoughts and opinions, and I hope that you do the same. It's should be fairly positive, but we'll see. This is the internet after all, and we occasionally attract a doomer or two around here on the channel. Anyway, so my feedback here is specifically rooted into two core ideas. Now, I consider myself a hardcore casual player, being that I have kids, a job, a life, a family. Like, there's a lot of things, a lot of pressures, a lot of responsibilities that fall on my shoulders. And so the current war invasion system does not work out for me. Again, I don't want to say that we should just scrap the current system just to appease me, but this is just what I've been thinking about the system itself and how I think it can be improved. So that's kind of point one. The second idea that this is rooted in is with all the issues around server mergers and massive population shifts. This tends to really upset the life cycle balance of the game itself. And I think that the most important thing is to get to actually kind of more cross server style content. And I would love to see even cross server style open world content. So a part of me hopes that this actually does help address the issue itself, or at least gets the brain, storm going on, so we can kind of figure out and give good feedback to what we want to see and how we want to see this evolve. Now, the devs have talked about already bringing in wars and invasions into a piece of content that more people can participate in, because right now it ends up being more isolated to those who are able to make the schedule and who really want to participate in that content. So I do know probably what I'm going to talk about here in a little bit might upset those people, and I'm not intending to. I'm just trying to figure out the right way forward. So bear with me. Now, I want to first take the approach of that more cross-server content. Now, I totally understand the importance of the current territory control system, but then I thought back to my Final Fantasy XI days, and I remember they actually had a system of territory control that was rooted in player activity and not just decided by one specific event. So here's what I propose. Make everything you do in this game count as progress, aka points, aka XP, towards a weekly goal for your faction. And also allow wars and invasions to become content modes that players can enjoy. And obviously this would apply to cross-server and invasion. So you would see the evolution of those two modes completely. Now, we're going to come back to this point more in a second, but here are a few things that I think would get interesting. All the activities that you do, like play in wars and win wars, give you a lot of points for your faction total for that zone. Now, each week, the points and influence is reported and the territory is handed out if it needs to change hands. Now, what I don't know yet, and I'd love your thoughts on, is how would you decide which company within the faction actually gets control of the land? Sound off. I'm still working on that one. That's something that I'd love to get y'all's thoughts on, specifically because I can't find a right and fair way to go about it. I thought about like RNG. I thought about specifically like influencing like the majority, but really I'd love for some feedback on how you would go about that if they implemented in this kind of system. Now, during the week, you actually could see what faction influence is going on. The longer a faction actually tends to hold its own, the more other factions actually would get a multiplier for playing in that zone. But yes, let's do some very basic math, and please note these are just made up numbers to try and illustrate this as an example. I'm sure a lot of tests in terms of the balance would absolutely be needed. So just if I say a number, it's made up. So it's made up as just an example. I just want to be very clear. Sometimes people are like, I would have made it, 50 points more. I'm like, okay. It's all a game theory in this case. Now, personally, I think they should use the XP system as the base level points that a player actually gets. So it's simple and easy to transpose into this one. Gathering, for example, would give you like 10p of influence every time you like chop down a tree or harvest something. Crafting obviously would do the same. Based off the experience that you would get by crafting, that would go towards your faction influence. Open world mobs, bosses, PvE, faction missions, all of these things would give you a base amount of 1,000 experience of influence by just turning in these things. So doing an open world boss, obviously depending on the boss and the difficulty, that would have to scale out. But I think essentially factions and quests and things like that would still reward you for doing them and count as progress for the week. Now, completing a dungeon, I think, would probably reward you roughly around like 500 XP of influence, and that might seem off. Maybe we'd say 500 for the quest and 1,000 for the dungeons. I think it should be actually measured more as a function of time. How long does it take you to complete the dungeon? My fear, though, is that if the incentive is so much that you end up feeling like you have to do everything really fast. And so again, testing, balance, player psychology, I would love to bring that in, because I would hate to introduce a system that stressed people out because, oh no, I got to run this dungeon in 10 minutes. Otherwise we're not going to be maximizing our efficiency here. Wars completed would give you a base of 5,000. Wars 1 would give you an additional 10,000. Invasions would give you a base 2,500. Invasions 1 would give additional 5,000 XP of influence. You can see how that as a multiplier for those participating would be actually substantial. And again, depending on how substantive they are and how often they're being done, that's where they really would want to come in. I still think that they need to be pinnacle pieces of content in the game itself, and thus essentially make them very valuable. But clearly, doing anything else would still continue. So you could still, within a time frame, go and gather a lot and still rack up a lot of experience of influence for your faction. But again, made up numbers. Gonna keep saying that. Open world PvP could actually have a multiplier reward for influence, and they could even target specific zones where that influence is going to be greater, thus kind of incentivizing more open world PvP zone by zone, moment by moment. And you would see this all happening on the map. Like, oh man, there's a big thing going on down in, like Cutlass Keys, I was going to say Cutter Cry, like from Final Fantasy 14. And then all of a sudden, that's where a lot of the activity is happening, and that's where a lot more things are going on. And it could end up being, pretty cool, in my opinion, I think, if balanced well. Now, since this isn't zone specific, obviously like OPR and Arena, perhaps those would give you like an item that you could use, and you could pop those and use those in a zone. And maybe there'd be kind of a bigger cooldown on those, so you're not like waiting to the last part of the week and just kind of burning through all your OPR and Arena rewards. But maybe Arena would give you like 100 XP for completion of a match, 500 for OPR, something like that. And those items could be used with the general cooldown, the idea that you would go to a zone, pop it off just to, I don't know, maybe help push you over the edge, etc. Now, the goal here is that no matter what you're doing, you're gaining influence for your faction. And this could open up the game for more cross-world activities and take the wars out of the scheduled mode and allow them to act as just content within the game. I don't know ultimately how that gets balanced out, because wars as a part of their schedule and a part of being undermined end up kind of taking the cake. But I think this would actually make it to where more people could participate in that, and then you can see that as just more content offerings for a wider range of people. Then you factor the fact that they could be cross-server, and then you got OPR, Arena, Wars as kind of the three pinnacle PvP modes that people could participate in, drawing from the data center and servers. So you end up having a greater level range of people to come participate and enjoy the game on what works more for their schedule. So if you're, like me, you're not having to get on at 8 o'clock, just to participate in a war, because sometimes that just doesn't work out. So you end up missing that window. All right. So like I said, it's just no matter what you're doing, I think everything that you do in the game should have some points, obviously, in that regards. Now, the idea that people might just want to play on the most dominant faction here would be offset by the more territory you control, or perhaps actually the less territory you control week over week, the stronger your influence modifier grows. So you think if everything's kind of evened out, everybody kind of has an even set of control, well, maybe everybody's at like multiplier of 1. And then essentially like, oh, you're in a less dominated faction, and then each week that as you have less control, well, that becomes a 2 multiplier, and then a 3 times multiplier. So then it ends up, the system kind of self-balances in a way where you can get that. Now, as you get that influence, you know, and all of a sudden you become like a dominant or a competing faction, then that would start also stepping itself backwards and back down, thus always kind of having that extra flow itself, and thus trying to kind of disincentivize the one faction to rule them all mindset in the game. And thus, again, like if you're just crafting gathering, you're still participating in your faction, so you still want that, and you want those kind of players, even if they're not interested in touching PvP at all. So that's just kind of the thought regarding the dominant faction. And so, yeah, I would love to see that. This could also have the added benefit of groups actually looking for more open world PvP to focus in on a territory and seeing where they're winning or where they're about to win, or could actually help populate those moment to moment games within the system. So guys, we all got to go to this zone. Like it's getting down to it. Now, clearly when the totaling would happen, obviously that's probably when a lot of activity would happen. But generally speaking, if you kind of consider Tuesday as a good reset within kind of the game itself, that could make that Mondays, very populated. Monday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, very populated in terms of like activity in the game. But then still everything that's going on during the week still has that level of influence, etc. Anyway, this is just what I've been thinking of. This would be best if paired with obviously more cross-world play, so that friends could join in return and you won't find yourself having to hop servers, but rather just team up together. And I know this would impact a part of what people love about the current system, but I figured I'd just share my thoughts on the matter and let you all weigh in with yours as well. And perhaps there's a way that you could keep the current system in regards of wars and having kind of that scheduled mindset, and maybe have those be real bangers in terms of the influence, etc. Where yes, kind of like you lost that scheduled war that occurred, and instead of like what I was talking about with the additional 10,000, it's like, oh yeah, that's clearly like 100,000, something so almost guaranteeing that y'all can control it, unless the rest of the faction can come up and just chip away through the other activities within the game itself. But those are just my thoughts on that. I really appreciate your time. I look forward to listening to your thoughts, reading your thoughts down below, and I obviously wish you all the best. Hopefully I'll see you guys in my next video, and if you feel like this video earned it, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know if you do, and welcome to the channel. I hope you have a wonderful week, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video. I'm just flubbing. All right, I'll stop rambling. Thanks guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Yeah. It's time to chill out on the couch and read some comments. That's right. You know me when it comes to Destiny. I'm off with a clan, and I'm glad you're feeling better. Oh yeah.